Hello, my name is William, and welcome to Dragon X Dominion, a realm where dragon legends are forged in fire, honor, and forgotten worlds. I will be your narrator and guide through these epic lands. If you crave powerful stories, legendary dragons, and wars that echo through eternity, then you found your home, ladies and gentlemen. So like, subscribe, and claim your place among these legends.
The wrench slipped from Ben Carter's greasy fingers and clattered onto the concrete floor. He cursed quietly and bent to retrieve it, feeling every one of his 34 years in his lower back. The workshop around him was silent except for the hum of old ventilation systems struggling to filter the rust-colored dust that blew constantly across Redstone 7. 3 years ago, this place had been alive with noise. Miners coming and going, transport ships landing daily, the cantina full of voices and laughter. Now Ben was alone. The mining company had pulled out when the ore deposits ran dry. Everyone else had left too, catching rides on the last commercial transports. Ben had stayed behind because he had nowhere else to go and no money to get there anyway. He finished tightening the bolt on the old moisture collector and sat back. It would keep working for another few months at least. Everything on this dying colony was held together with spare parts and stubborn refusal to quit, including him. His stomach growled. Ben walked to the small kitchen area in the corner of his workshop and heated a ration pack. The same bland protein paste he had eaten yesterday and would eat tomorrow. He ate standing up, looking out the grimy window at the red landscape beyond. The sun was setting, turning the rust-colored rocks into something almost beautiful. After cleaning up, Ben grabbed his scanning equipment and headed for the old mining tunnels. The eastern shaft had partially collapsed last week, and collapsed tunnels sometimes meant exposed tech worth salvaging. He needed credits badly. The automated supply drone was due in 2 weeks, and his account was nearly empty. The tunnel entrance gaped like a dark mouth in the hillside. Ben switched on his headlamp and made his way inside, boots crunching on loose stone. The air smelled of dust and minerals. His scanner beeped occasionally, picking up traces of old equipment deeper in the shaft. He worked his way carefully around the collapse zone, checking his scanner. Mostly worthless debris, some broken conduit, a shattered data terminal that might have recoverable parts. He was about to give up when the scanner went wild, chirping frantically. Ben followed the signal to a crack in the collapsed wall. Squeezing through, he found himself in a small chamber he had never seen before. The scanner was going crazy. In the center of the chamber, half buried in fallen rock, something glowed with a faint pulsing light. It took him 20 minutes to carefully dig it out. When he finally held it up to his headlamp, Ben's breath caught. It was an egg, about the size of his head, crystalline surface catching the light, warm to the touch. Veins of color pulsed beneath the surface like a slow heartbeat. He ran every scan he knew, biological, definitely alive, but nothing in any database matched it. The energy signature was unlike anything he had seen. Ben knew he should probably leave it where he found it. Unknown alien organisms were dangerous, but as he held it, the glow brightened, pulsing faster, almost like it recognized his presence. For the first time in 3 years, Ben felt something other than loneliness. He took it home. Ben cleared a space on his workbench and made a nest of thermal blankets. The egg seemed to like warmth, glowing brighter when he positioned a heat lamp nearby. He sat watching it for hours, not even pretending to do other work. The egg pulsed with that steady rhythm, like a heartbeat, and Ben found himself timing his own breathing to match. Over the next week, he barely left the workshop. The egg changed. The glow grew stronger. Fine cracks appeared on the surface, spreading like a web. Ben talked to it constantly, feeling foolish but unable to stop. He told it about Earth, about how he ended up on this dead world, about the silence that was slowly driving him mad. On the 8th day, the egg hatched. Ben woke to a sharp cracking sound. He rushed to the workbench and watched as a tiny claw punched through the crystalline shell. More cracks spread. Pieces fell away. A small head emerged, covered in scales that gleamed like polished copper in the lamplight. The creature struggled free and stood on wobbly legs. It was no bigger than a cat, with wings folded against its sides, a long tail, and eyes that seemed far too intelligent for something just born. Those eyes found Ben and locked onto him. Ben recognized it from old stories and ancient myths. A dragon. He had hatched a dragon. The little creature made a sound, somewhere between a chirp and a whistle. It tried to walk toward Ben and stumbled, still weak from hatching. Without thinking, Ben reached out and caught it before it fell. The dragon's scales were warm, almost hot, and smooth as glass. It looked up at him and made that sound again, softer this time. "Hey there," Ben whispered, cradling it carefully. "I'm Ben. Welcome to the worst planet in the sector." The dragon chirped and pressed its head against Ben's chest. Ben felt something break open inside him, some wall he had built to survive the loneliness. He blinked away tears and smiled. "You're gonna need a name," he said. "How about Copper? You look like polished copper." The dragon's eyes closed, content. It fell asleep in Ben's arms, tiny sides rising and falling with each breath. Ben sat down carefully in his chair, still holding the sleeping dragon. Outside, the wind howled across the dead colony. But inside the workshop, for the first time in years, Ben didn't feel alone. He had something that needed him, something that chose to trust him. He had no idea that the tiny creature sleeping in his arms was royalty. He had no idea that finding this egg would change the fate of empires. He just knew that he finally had a reason to keep going. Copper chirped softly in his sleep, and Ben smiled. Everything was about to change. Copper couldn't digest normal food. Ben learned this the hard way when the little dragon refused every protein source he offered and grew visibly weaker over 2 days. Panic drove Ben to try everything in his storage. Ration packs, dried vegetables, even his emergency chocolate. Nothing worked. On the 3rd day, Copper barely moved. His copper scales had lost their shine, and his breathing was shallow. Ben was desperate. He ground up mineral samples from his geology kit and mixed them with water, making a thin paste. He had no idea if it would help or make things worse. Copper lapped it up eagerly. Within hours, the little dragon was moving again. His scales regained their luster. He chirped happily and climbed onto Ben's shoulder, curling around his neck like a scarf. Ben nearly cried with relief. After that, feeding Copper became Ben's full-time job. The dragon needed rare earth minerals, specific compounds that Ben had to either synthesize or extract from ore samples. It was expensive. Every credit Ben earned from salvage went into keeping Copper alive. He stopped buying decent food for himself. He canceled his entertainment subscriptions. He sold equipment he might need later. He didn't care. Copper was worth it. 3 months passed. Copper grew fast, reaching the size of a large dog. He followed Ben everywhere, learning to fetch tools and help with repairs. The dragon was incredibly smart. He watched Ben work once and understood. He could operate simple mechanisms with his claws and even learned to weld using his fire breath at low intensity. Ben talked to Copper constantly, and the dragon listened with those unnervingly intelligent eyes. Sometimes Ben swore Copper understood every word. The dragon would tilt his head, make considering sounds, and act on what Ben had said. It was like having a friend again. A weird, fire-breathing, mineral-eating friend, but a friend nonetheless. Then the ship arrived. Ben was in the eastern salvage yard with Copper when his proximity alarm went off. A ship was landing near his workshop, not a supply drone, a real ship. Ben felt his stomach drop. Nobody came to Redstone 7 anymore. He found Copper and ran back to the workshop. By the time he arrived, 3 figures stood outside his door. They were tall, humanoid, but something about them was wrong. Their movements were too fluid, too predatory. When they turned to look at him, their eyes were slitted like a reptile's. The leader stepped forward. She had silver hair and scars across her face and arms. When she spoke, her voice had a strange harmonics that made Ben's chest vibrate. "I am Mora of the Sovereign Clutch," she said. "You have something that belongs to us." Ben positioned himself between them and his workshop door. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The hatchling, we tracked his energy signature here." Mora's eyes narrowed. "Return Prince Talmer immediately and we will leave peacefully." Behind Ben, inside the workshop, Copper made a low, growling sound. Ben's heart pounded. "There's no prince here, just my friend Copper." One of the other aliens laughed. "Your friend? Human, you have stolen the heir to the Crimson Throne. That creature is worth more than your entire species." Mora held up a hand, silencing her companion. She studied Ben carefully. "You truly don't know what you found, do you?" "I found an egg in a collapsed mine shaft. I hatched it, I raised it. Copper is mine." "Copper," Mora repeated, and something almost like amusement crossed her face. "You named the dragon Prince Copper. The Sovereign Council will find that hilarious before they execute you for theft." The workshop door opened. Copper emerged, now fully grown to his current size. He placed himself directly in front of Ben, wings spread, a low rumble coming from his throat. The three aliens stepped back. Instinctively, Mora's eyes widened. "Impossible, he's defending you. No royal dragon would defend a human. We are apex predators, you are prey." "Copper's not defending me," Ben said quietly. "He's standing with me, there's a difference." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Mora made a gesture, and the other two aliens relaxed slightly. She approached slowly, keeping her movements non-threatening. When she got close to Copper, she made a series of whistling, clicking sounds. Copper responded in kind. The exchange went on for several minutes. Ben couldn't understand it, but he could see Mora's expression changing from angry to confused to something that might have been respect. Finally, she turned back to Ben. "He says you are his chosen companion, that you saved him when he was dying, that you gave up everything to keep him alive." She paused. "This should not be possible. Dragon princes are raised through trial and hardship. The weak are culled. Talmer was stolen from our royal hatchery and lost during transport. We assumed he was dead. We came here to retrieve his body." "He's not dead," Ben said, "and I'm not giving him up." "You don't understand what you've done, human. By nurturing him, by showing him kindness, you've made him weak, unsuitable for the throne. When our current Dragon King dies, there will be a succession trial. 7 heirs will compete. The weak ones die. Talmer should have been the strongest, but you've ruined him." Ben felt anger rising in his chest. "I didn't ruin anything. I saved his life." "You made him soft," Mora shot back. "You taught him to rely on others, to accept help, to trust. These are not dragon virtues, these are weaknesses." Copper made a sharp sound and displayed colors along his scales that Ben had never seen before, deep reds and golds that seemed to shimmer with authority. All three aliens dropped to one knee immediately. Mora stood back up slowly, her expression shaken. "Royal command markers, instinctive, he truly is the heir." She looked at Ben with something between pity and fascination. "You have created an impossible thing, human, a dragon prince who cares about something other than power." "Is that really so impossible?" Ben asked. Mora was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, "I was once an heir. I lost my throne to a brother who was more brutal, more willing to kill. I see in Talmer something I never had, choice." She took a deep breath. "I will make you an offer. Keep him. Raise him as you see fit. But when the Dragon King dies and the succession trials begin, Talmer must return. If he refuses his birthright because you made him weak, the Sovereign Clutch will consider it an act of war against your species. And if he chooses to compete, then he will almost certainly die, but he will die as a prince." Mora and her companions returned to their ship. Ben watched them leave, then turned to Copper. The dragon looked at him with those intelligent eyes, waiting. "I won't raise you to be a weapon," Ben said quietly. "And I won't raise you to be a king. I'll raise you to be someone who can choose what they want to be." Copper pressed his head against Ben's chest, rumbling softly. Outside, the stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there was an empire of dragons, brutal and powerful, waiting for Copper to return. Ben had no idea how to prepare for that. He only knew he would try. 1 year changed everything. Copper grew to the size of a small transport shuttle, magnificent and powerful. His copper scales gleamed like armor in the sunlight, and when he spread his wings, they cast shadows across the entire settlement. But size wasn't the only change. Copper could speak now. Not just dragon whistles and clicks, but actual words in a dozen languages. He taught Ben the dragon language in return, though Ben's human throat could only manage the basic sounds. They spent hours talking about everything from mechanical theory to philosophy to the meaning of strength. Other people started arriving on Redstone 7. Word had spread somehow about the abandoned colony with the friendly dragon. First came a Felnar engineer named Rilla, fleeing corporate debt collectors. Her ship limped into the landing zone with failing engines and no fuel. Ben and Copper helped her repair it, then convinced her to stay. Then a human family arrived, the Okonkwo family, whose transport had broken down between systems. They had 3 kids and no money for repairs. Copper used his fire to power their ship systems while Ben fabricated new parts. The parents, David and Amara, decided to settle. The kids loved Copper, climbing on his back and playing in his shadow. A young Sorelli artist named Pell came next, running from an arranged marriage. Then an old trader. Then a group of miners who had heard the colony might be opening again. Within months, Redstone 7 had 50 residents. They built new structures, started a real community. Copper helped with everything, using his strength to move heavy materials and his fire to power construction tools. Ben watched his friend become something more than a dragon. Copper was a protector, a helper, a friend to everyone. The kids adored him. The adults respected him. Even the gruff old miners would bring him mineral treats and share stories. Then the distress call came. Ben was working in the expanded workshop when the emergency frequency crackled to life. A passenger ship, the Meridian, was breaking apart in orbit. Hull breach. Life support failing. 200 people on board, mostly refugees. They had maybe an hour before the ship tore itself apart completely. Ben tried to raise the Sovereign Clutch warship he knew was in the system. They were dragons, powerful with advanced technology. They could help. The response was cold and immediate. Not their jurisdiction, not their problem. The ship full of dying people was someone else's responsibility. Ben looked at Copper. The dragon looked back. Neither of them needed to say anything. They launched in Ben's modified cargo hauler 20 minutes later. Rilla came too, bringing her engineering expertise. The hauler wasn't designed for rescue work, but they had made it work anyway. As they approached the Meridian, Ben could see the damage. The ship was coming apart, trailing debris and atmosphere. "This is insane," Rilla muttered, running calculations. "Even if we stabilize the hull, we can't evacuate 200 people. We don't have the space." "We're not evacuating them," Ben said. "We're saving the ship." Copper was already moving. He opened the cargo hauler's bay and launched himself into space. Dragons could survive vacuum for short periods, and Copper had practiced. Ben watched through the view screen as his friend spread his wings, catching solar radiation for heat, and positioned himself against the largest hull breach. The dragon's body covered the gap. His scales locked together, forming an airtight seal. Inside the Meridian, emergency systems detected the pressure change and started compensating. Ben and Rilla suited up and went EVA with repair kits. They worked frantically, welding patches over the breaches while Copper held position. The dragon couldn't stay out there forever. Already Ben could see frost forming on Copper's scales. "Faster," Ben urged, working his welder at maximum speed. Rilla matched his pace, her 4 Felnar arms allowing her to work twice as fast as any human. Inside the Meridian, the crew was doing their part, rerouting power, shutting down damaged sections, preparing the passengers for possible evacuation. The ship's captain, a grizzled human named Tors, kept communication open. "Unknown vessel, we owe you our lives," Tors said. "Who are you?" "Just some people who couldn't ignore a distress call," Ben replied, finishing another weld. "Unlike some others in this system." It took 40 minutes, but they did it. The hull was sealed. Life support stabilized. The Meridian would make it to the nearest station for proper repairs. Copper pulled away from the hull and returned to the cargo hauler, his scales covered in ice crystals that melted quickly in the ship's warmth. Ben rushed to him. "Are you okay?" Cold, Copper rumbled. "But alive, they are safe." All of them, 200 people, are alive because of you. What Ben didn't know was that someone on the Meridian had recorded everything. The video showed a massive dragon sealing a hull breach with his own body, while a human and a Felnar worked desperately to save a ship full of strangers. The video went viral across the sector within hours. Suddenly, everyone knew about Talmer, the dragon prince who saved instead of conquered. It embarrassed the sovereign clutch. Their warship had ignored the distress call while a single dragon and 2 individuals in a cargo hauler had saved 200 lives. The contrast was stark and damaging. It also inspired people. More refugees came to Redstone 7, seeking the kind dragon and his human friend. The settlement grew to over 200 permanent residents. They built schools, farms, workshops. It was becoming a real town. But the attention had consequences. Mora returned one evening, landing alone. She found Ben and Copper in the community square, where Copper was helping install a new water purification system. "You've made waves," Mora said without preamble. "The Sovereign Council is furious. You've made them look cruel and incompetent." "We just helped people," Ben said. "Is that a crime in your empire?" "No, but it's not encouraged either." Mora studied Copper carefully. "The Dragon King is dying faster than we expected, maybe weeks left. The succession trials will begin immediately after his death. You need to prepare." Copper looked up from his work. "I know what I am, Mora. I know what's coming." "Do you? The other heirs have been training their entire lives for this. They've killed challengers. They've conquered territories. They've proven their strength in blood." She paused. "What have you proven?" "That strength can build instead of destroy," Copper said quietly. "That power can protect instead of dominate. That a leader can be chosen by those he serves, not feared by those he rules." Mora was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "The Dragon King wants to meet you before he dies, both of you. He's ordered me to bring you to the throne world. You leave in 3 days." After she left, Ben sat with Copper under the stars. The settlement around them was alive with light and voices. Children played. Families gathered for evening meals. This was what they had built together. "We don't have to go," Ben said. "Yes, we do," Copper replied. "These people need a future. If I refuse the throne, the next Dragon King might destroy everything we've built. I have to try." Ben nodded slowly. "Then we'd better get ready." 3 days to prepare for an empire. The throne world appeared in the viewport like a jewel burning in space. Massive and ancient, covered in crystal spires and volcanic ranges, with skies full of dragons in constant flight. Ben had seen pictures, but pictures couldn't capture the raw power radiating from the planet. Mora had spent the 3-day journey training Copper in dragon combat forms and throne room politics. Ben watched his friend learn moves designed to kill, strategies meant to dominate. It made him sick, but he understood. Copper needed to survive what was coming. "Remember," Mora said as they entered atmosphere, "the other heirs will test you immediately. They see you as weak, an embarrassment. They'll try to provoke you into making mistakes." "Let them try," Copper said calmly. They landed in the royal district, where the palace sprawled across an active volcano. Heat shimmered in the air. Dragons of every size and color filled the courtyards and landing platforms. When Copper emerged from the ship, every eye turned to watch. The other heirs were waiting, 7 of them, each massive and battle-scarred. Their leader, a black dragon covered in old wounds, approached first. His name was Drell, and his eyes burned with contempt. "So this is the pet prince?" Drell said, his voice like grinding stone. "Raised by a human. Tell me, little Copper, does your master feed you treats when you're good?" The other heirs laughed. Ben felt anger rising, but Copper remained perfectly calm. "Ben is my friend, not my master," Copper said evenly. "I'm sorry you don't understand the difference." Drell's eyes narrowed. "I understand weakness when I see it. You'll die in the first trial, pet." "Perhaps, but I'll die free, which is more than you can say." Before Drell could respond, a deep bell tolled across the palace. The heirs immediately fell silent and arranged themselves in formation. Mora gestured urgently for Ben and Copper to follow. They entered the throne room, and Ben's breath caught. It was carved from the volcano itself, walls of black stone veined with gold, floor of polished crystal that reflected the magma flowing beneath. On a throne of pure diamond sat the Dragon King. He was ancient, scales dull with age, wings tattered, eyes clouded, but power still radiated from him like heat from a fire. When he spoke, the entire room vibrated. "My heirs, my death approaches. The trials begin at dawn." His gaze found Copper. "Talmer, you chose a human over your birthright. Explain yourself." Copper stepped forward. Ben wanted to follow, but Mora held him back. This was something Copper had to do alone. "I didn't choose a human over my birthright, my king. I chose kindness over cruelty. I chose building over destroying. I chose to be worth following instead of worth fearing." Silence, then the Dragon King laughed, a sound like rocks breaking. "Worth following, the other heirs have armies. What do you have, little prince?" "Friends," Copper said simply. "People who choose to stand with me, not because they fear me, but because they believe in what we're building together." The Dragon King studied him for a long moment. "We will see if friendship survives the trials. The first begins at dawn, single combat elimination. Only the strong advance." That night, Ben found Copper on a high terrace overlooking the capital city. The dragon was staring at the lights below, lost in thought. "Are you scared?" Ben asked, sitting beside him. "Terrified," Copper admitted. "Not of dying, of losing myself, of becoming what they want me to be." "Then don't. Remember why we're here. Remember what we built on Redstone 7. What if it's not enough? What if being kind really is being weak?" Ben was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I've seen you hold a collapsing hull breach with your body to save 200 strangers. I've seen you work 16-hour days helping people build homes. I've seen you comfort a crying child who was afraid of storms. If that's weakness, Copper, then strength is worthless." Copper turned to look at him. "The trials are designed to reward brutality. Then change the game. Show them there's another way to be strong." Dawn came too quickly. The arena was ancient, carved from volcanic rock with seating for thousands of dragons. The crowd was enormous, all of them there to watch the heirs fight for the throne. The first match was announced. Copper versus Herok, a vicious green dragon known for his poison breath. Ben watched from the observation platform with Mora and the other non-combatants, his heart pounding. The fight started fast. Herok attacked immediately, breathing toxic clouds that would paralyze most dragons. But Copper had trained for this. He used his wings to create air currents, dispersing the poison before it could affect him. Herok switched tactics, going for close combat with claws and teeth. He fought dirty, going for eyes and wing joints, breaking every rule of honorable combat. The crowd loved it. This was what they expected from dragon heirs. Copper fought defensively at first, dodging and blocking, conserving energy. Ben could see Mora's training in every move, but there was something else too. Copper wasn't trying to hurt Herok, he was trying to tire him out. It worked. After 20 minutes of frantic attacking, Herok was exhausted. His movements slowed. His breath came in ragged gasps. Copper saw his opening and took it, moving with incredible speed to pin Herok to the arena floor, jaws at his throat. The crowd fell silent. This was it, the killing blow, the moment that would prove Copper belonged among the heirs. Copper stepped back. "Yield," he said clearly. "You fought well, there's no shame in surrender." The crowd erupted in confused noise. No heir had ever offered mercy in the trials. It was unheard of. Herok stared up at Copper in shock. "You're sparing me. I'm giving you a choice. Keep fighting and maybe die, or yield and live to see tomorrow." Herok struggled to his feet. For a moment, Ben thought he might attack again. Then the green dragon lowered his head. "I yield." The arena exploded with mixed reactions. Some dragons roared approval, others hissed in disgust. The trial judges conferred, then announced that Copper had won. Mercy or not, he had achieved victory. Drell was watching from across the arena, his expression unreadable. Ben saw something dangerous in those eyes. The Black Dragon hadn't expected Copper to win, and he definitely hadn't expected mercy. That night, a group of palace servants came to Copper's quarters. They were small dragons from the lower castes, the ones who served but never led. They knelt before Copper. "My prince," their leader said, "we've never known a royal who showed mercy. We've never known one who chose kindness. If you win the throne, will you remember us?" Copper looked at them, then at Ben. "I'll do better than remember you. I'll make sure you have a voice in how this empire is run." After they left, Ben said, "You just made powerful allies." "No," Copper said, "I just did what was right, whether it helps me win or not." In the shadows outside, Drell was already planning. Mercy was weakness, and weakness could be exploited. The trials continued over the following weeks. Each test was designed to showcase traditional dragon virtues: strength, cunning, ruthlessness. Copper approached everyone differently, and it was driving the old guard insane. In the hunt trial, heirs were supposed to track and kill a dangerous predator from the volcanic wastes. The other heirs returned with trophies, their kills displayed for the crowd. Copper tracked his target, a massive lava serpent, then used his fire to guide it into a newly established nature preserve on the outskirts of the capital. He argued that true strength was controlling a situation without unnecessary death. The judges didn't know how to score it. Half called it genius, half called it weakness. They gave him points anyway because he had demonstrated superior tracking and tactical thinking. In the wisdom trial, heirs faced an impossible diplomatic scenario. A colony world wanted independence, but sat on resources the empire needed. Previous heirs had chosen military occupation or economic strangling. Copper proposed a partnership where the colony maintained autonomy while sharing resources through fair trade agreements. Both sides won. Again, the judges were divided, but the younger dragons in the crowd were starting to cheer. They had never seen an heir who looked for solutions instead of dominations. Support for Copper grew. Lower caste dragons brought him gifts of rare minerals. Scholars debated his methods in the palace libraries. Even some guards privately expressed hope that he might win, but not everyone was pleased. Drell saw the growing support and decided to act. He spread lies about Copper, claiming the human had used technology to enhance the dragon's abilities during trials. He produced fake evidence, bribed witnesses, and called for Copper's disqualification and execution. The trial council convened. The evidence looked convincing. Data logs showed unusual energy signatures around Copper during his trials. 3 witnesses testified they had seen Ben tampering with Copper's equipment. The penalty for cheating in succession trials was death. Ben stood before the council, his heart pounding. "I want to speak in defense." The head judge, an ancient gold dragon named Sareth, looked surprised. "You are not dragon. You have no standing in this court." "There's an old law," Mora interjected, stepping forward. "The law of advocacy. Anyone accused can name a speaker to defend them." Sareth's eyes narrowed. "That law hasn't been invoked in 3 centuries. "But it still exists," Ben said firmly. "I invoke it now." The council had no choice but to allow it. Ben approached the evidence table and began his analysis. He wasn't a lawyer, but he was an engineer, and the fabricated data had flaws. "These energy signatures don't match any human technology," Ben explained, pulling up technical readouts. "They're not even compatible with our systems, but they do match something else." He overlaid the signatures with natural dragon bioelectric patterns. "They match Copper's own energy output when he uses his abilities. Whoever forged this data didn't understand dragon biology well enough to fake it properly." The witnesses were next. Ben questioned each one methodically, finding contradictions in their stories. One claimed to have seen him at a location that was under surveillance at the time. Ben provided the surveillance footage showing he was nowhere near that place. Another described equipment that didn't exist. The third broke under questioning and admitted Drell had paid him to lie. But Ben wasn't done. "This isn't about evidence. This is about fear. Copper is different. He chooses cooperation over conquest. He values life over death. He believes strength can build instead of destroy, and that terrifies some of you because it means everything you've based your power on might be wrong. The council chamber was silent. Ben continued, his voice strong. I've watched this dragon choose mercy when cruelty would be easier. I've seen him work until exhaustion to help people he'd never met. I've seen him put his body between danger and the innocent. You can call that weakness if you want, but I call it the kind of strength that actually matters. The kind that makes others want to follow you, not because they fear you, but because they trust you. Sareth studied Ben for a long moment. Then she turned to Mora. You have proof of these accusations against Drell. Mora stepped forward and presented evidence she had been gathering for weeks. Messages between Drell and his conspirators. Financial records showing bribes. Most damning of all, proof that Drell had been involved in the original theft of Copper's egg years ago. Drell wanted Copper dead before he could become a threat, Mora explained. When that failed, he tried to ruin him instead. The council had no choice. They cleared Copper of all charges and censured Drell. It wasn't enough to disqualify him from the trials, but it damaged his reputation severely. Many of his supporters abandoned him. That night, Ben found Copper alone in the royal gardens, staring at a pool of water that reflected the stars above. Thank you, Copper said quietly, for defending me. Always, Ben replied. That's what friends do. The final trial is announced tomorrow. The trial of flame. It's where the throne is truly won. What does it involve? Each heir presents their vision for the Empire's future, both in words and in action. The entire court votes, not just the nobles. Every dragon present gets a voice. Copper looked at Ben. I'm scared. What if I'm wrong? What if mercy really is weakness? What if I win and can't actually change anything? Ben sat beside him. Remember Redstone 7. Remember those kids who played on your back. Remember Rilla, who trusted you enough to stay. Remember those 200 people on the Meridian who are alive because you chose to help them. You're not wrong, Copper. You're just the first one brave enough to be right differently. What if they don't choose me? Then we go home and keep building what we started. But I think they will choose you, because deep down, everyone wants a leader who makes them better, not just stronger. The next morning, the final trial was announced. Only 3 heirs remained: Copper, Drell, and Shira, a cunning bronze dragon who had stayed neutral throughout the political fighting. The trial of flame would take place in 3 days in the great throne room before the assembled court. Copper spent those 3 days preparing, not practicing speeches or planning demonstrations, but talking to dragons throughout the palace. Servants, guards, scholars, artisans. He listened to their hopes and fears. He learned what they wanted from their next ruler. On the morning of the trial, Ben helped Copper polish his scales until they gleamed like polished copper. Whatever happens today, Ben said, I'm proud of you. You stayed true to yourself. I learned that from you, Copper replied. You taught me that who you choose to be matters more than what others expect you to be. They walked together to the throne room, where the future of an empire would be decided. The throne room was packed with thousands of dragons. Every caste, every rank, every color and size. This was unprecedented. Usually only nobles attended the final trial, but Copper had insisted that every dragon who wanted to witness the trial should be allowed. The council had reluctantly agreed. Drell went first. He stood before the assembly and delivered a powerful speech about strength through conquest, about expanding the empire's borders, about maintaining the traditional order that had served dragons for millennia. For his demonstration, he showed tactical plans for subjugating 3 neighboring systems, complete with military projections and resource calculations. It was impressive, terrifying, and exactly what the old guard wanted to hear. The nobles applauded. The military commanders roared approval. This was a dragon king, they understood. Shira followed with a more moderate approach. She proposed careful expansion, selective modernization, and maintaining the current power structure with minor reforms. It was safe, balanced, and thoroughly uninspiring. The crowd's reaction was polite but unenthusiastic. Then it was Copper's turn. He didn't walk to the center of the chamber. He didn't make himself larger or more imposing. He simply stood where he was and began to speak, his voice quiet enough that everyone had to strain to listen. "I was stolen from this palace as an egg," Copper began, "left to die in a collapsed mine on a worthless world. I should have died there. Instead, a human found me. A lonely mechanic named Ben Carter who had nothing, who was barely surviving himself. He could have sold me, could have turned me in for a reward. Instead, he spent everything he had to keep me alive. He talked to me, taught me, showed me that strength doesn't mean dominating others. It means lifting them up." The crowd was silent, listening. "I learned about leadership from watching Ben help strangers who came to our settlement. A Felnar engineer fleeing debt, a family with broken ship, an artist escaping oppression. Ben helped every one of them not because he had to, but because it was right. And you know what happened? They stayed. They built something together. They created a community where different species work as equals." Copper began to walk through the crowd, making eye contact with dragons of all castes. "That's what I'm proposing, not conquest, not domination, not the same brutal hierarchy we've always had. I'm proposing we become something better, something worth being part of, not just serving out of fear." He gestured, and holographic displays activated throughout the chamber, showing footage from Redstone 7. Dragons and humans and others working side by side. Children of different species playing together. The rescue of the meridian where Copper had sealed a hull breach with his own body. "This is what we could be," Copper said. "An empire where strength protects instead of destroys, where power builds instead of conquers, where every dragon, regardless of caste, has a voice in how we're governed." The chamber erupted in noise. The nobles were shouting in outrage. The lower castes were cheering. The chamber was dividing right down the middle. Drell couldn't contain himself. "This is madness. You want to destroy everything we've built." "No," Copper said calmly. "I want to build something better. But if you think the only way to prove that is through combat, then let's settle this the old way." The crowd went silent. Copper had just challenged Drell to single combat during the Trial of Flame. It was allowed under ancient law, but rarely invoked. Drell smiled, showing all his teeth. "Gladly, but not to death, to yield. Let's see if your mercy survives when you're the one losing." The combat began immediately. The crowd cleared space. Drell attacked with overwhelming force, using every brutal technique he knew. He was larger, more experienced, trained specifically for killing. Copper fought defensively, using everything Mora had taught him, but it wasn't enough. Drell was too strong, too skilled. Within minutes, Copper was bleeding from multiple wounds. His left wing was damaged. He was limping, but he didn't yield. "Stay down, pet prince," Drell snarled, pinning Copper to the floor. "Accept that you were never meant for this." Copper looked up at him, blood on his copper scales. "I don't fight to prove I'm stronger than you, Drell. I fight to prove there's another way." With a sudden burst of strength, Copper reversed the pin, using Drell's own momentum against him. It was a move Ben had shown him, adapted from human wrestling. Drell wasn't expecting it. Copper ended up with Drell pinned, jaws at his throat, the killing position. The crowd held its breath. This was it, the moment of truth. Copper stepped back. He offered his claw to help Drell up. "Join me," Copper said. "Help me build something better than this. You're strong, Drell, I'm not denying that. But imagine using that strength to protect instead of conquer, to build instead of destroy." Drell stared at the offered claw. For a moment, Ben thought he might accept. Then the black dragon stood on his own and walked away without a word. He had lost, but he hadn't yielded. He just left the trial entirely, conceding by default. The voting began. For the first time in dragon history, every dragon present got to cast a vote, not just the nobility. The count took hours. When it was finally announced, Copper had won. Not by unanimous support, but by a coalition of the hopeful, the young dragons, the lower castes, and even some progressive nobles who saw that change was coming whether they liked it or not. Copper was crowned Dragon King, but he refused the traditional title of Conqueror. Instead, he took the name Talmer the Builder. His first act as king was to establish a council of all castes to help govern. His second was to formalize alliances with human and other alien territories, based on mutual respect and cooperation. His third was to name Ben Carter as royal advisor and grant him full citizenship in the sovereign clutch. When Ben tried to protest, saying Copper needed to rule without his shadow, Copper refused. "You taught me everything I needed to be this. I'm not doing it alone." 5 years passed, the sovereign clutch transformed. Dragon fleets responded to distress calls now, helping instead of ignoring. Technology was shared with allied species. The caste system was gradually dismantled. There were still problems, still resistance from traditionalists, but change was happening. On Redstone 7, now a thriving hub of interspecies cooperation, a monument was erected in the central square. It showed a human and a dragon standing side by side. The inscription read, "He just wanted a pet. He got a friend. Together they got a future." Ben stood before that statue with Copper, both of them older now. Around them, the settlement buzzed with life. Hundreds of residents from dozens of species, all living and working together. "Do you ever regret it?" Ben asked. "Taking the throne, you could have just stayed here." Copper was quiet for a moment, watching a group of youngsters playing nearby, dragon and human children chasing each other and laughing. "No regrets. This is what we fought for. A future where they don't have to choose between being strong and being kind." A transport landed nearby, more refugees seeking the community that had become famous across the sector. Ben and Copper went to greet them, ready to help them start their new lives. The age of lonely survival was over. The age of chosen family had begun. And it all started with a desperate human who found an egg in a collapsed mine and chose compassion over profit. Sometimes the smallest choices create the biggest changes. Sometimes the weakest moments reveal the greatest strength. And sometimes a pet becomes a king, and a king learns what really matters. Not power, not conquest, not domination. Just friendship, freely given and freely returned. That was the future they built together. That was the legacy of the Dragon King who chose kindness. That was the story of Copper and Ben, two friends who changed an empire because they refused to accept that cruelty was strength. And across the sovereign clutch, in 1,000 settlements on 100 worlds, other unlikely friendships were forming. Other communities were building. Other people were learning that the future didn't have to look like the past. All because one human couldn't ignore a glowing egg. All because one dragon remembered where he came from. All because friendship turned out to be stronger than empires.